Welcome to the Scandinavia MIND podcast, where every week we talk about how technology is transforming the creative industries. Today on the program, can nothing convert Apple users to Android? This week we conduct a brand study of Nothing, the newly launched tech brand founded by the Swedish-Chinese super entrepreneur Carl Pei and the creative juggernaut Jesper Kouthoofd. The brand has an outspoken mission to convert Apple users to Android. Can they succeed? We talk about the strength of Apple's walled garden. What does the design sensibilities of Jesper Kouthoofd and his company Teenage Engineering mean for the brand? We talk about the Swedish creative powerhouse that was portrayed in Scandinavia MIND issue 3. We look at the brand's recent launch during London Fashion Week, and we have actually used the product, so we give a first-hand review of Nothing's Phone 1. I'm Konrad, Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavia MIND, and I'm here with Roland, Philippe, Kretzschmar, editor-at-large, and our junior editor, Erik, Sedin. Welcome, guys.
Hey, what's up?
Super excited. I've gotten a lot of feedback, meaning 3 people have said they listened to the episode and liked it since last week.
Wow, that's 3 more than usual.
No, really, we have a few hundred listeners, so I mean they're out there. But it's not often you meet people that really give thumbs up. So maybe we're onto something with the new format.
I don't think you should out how many or how few listeners we have, really. But
we're all about transparency here at Scandinavian Mind.
So talking about radical transparency. What was the feedback?
Positive feedback. We also got some feedback regarding the topic TikTok. I thought we could talk about that at the end of this episode when we do a little follow up on that.
Ooh, cliffhanger.
Yeah, but let's go into this week's topics. I think this is a fascinating thing that's happening. It's not always there's a new global, well-funded tech brand that comes on the market that has these strong Nordic and Swedish roots. It's also a brand, we're talking about Nothing here, a new tech brand, consumer electronics brand. So far they're doing headphones and they're launched a new phone. There's a few new products on the way. This is a company that has a strong creative angle to it. I feel like they take design very seriously, and as I said, it's they're based in London, but they have a strong Swedish connection. So I thought just to start with, guys, what's your sense of this new brand that has come out? What's your overall impressions of it so far?
It's interesting because if I have to put it shortly. It's an Android phone that kind of caught my attention. Being an Apple fanboy that I am, it actually made me interested as a tech writer to look into it, and also as a person. Writing in the group chats like, "Hey, this one looks cool," and also how it looks, like the design. That's probably what got to me, And it's Teenage Engineering, which we love, and Scandinavian Mind. We're well aware of them. We talked with their co-founder and CEO. So yeah, that's basically it. It reached out to me. That says a lot, being an Apple fanboy.
Roland, what's your take on this? Going into it.
I love the design language, both the headphones, the in-ear headphones, and the phone. I like the concept, the simplicity of it. It feels fresh, relevant, contemporary, and it makes me a bit pissed that I can't buy it. Because I've spent too much money on the Apple ecosystem, so there's there's zero incentive for me to move over to Android.
Okay. So you're answering the topic of the episode right off the bat, which is we were gonna get into that, and that's a huge issue here. I have the same sense. I really love the design. When we got the product to the office, I handed it over to Erik, but I held it in my hand. It looks really cool. It's the first time I felt like a tech product that really, got my engines running. I haven't been, I've been an Apple user for the past decade or so. I haven't been excited about a new phone in forever because to me they're like just another iteration of the last generation. But this felt fresh. This felt new. This felt exciting. So, and I think this is the outspoken mission that Carl Pei, a Chinese-born but a Swedish entrepreneur who previously founded and sold the Android phone brand OnePlus. So what he
How
wants.
much did he sell it for? Do you know?
So I haven't found any numbers on the selling price. I know the turnover was around $30 million or something like that at the
It's a
point
small
when
company.
it's pretty small, but I'm sure it was. I'm sure there was a hefty selling price. It depends on what perspective you have. It's small compared to Apple and Microsoft
No,
and
but
so
it's just
forth.
interesting that some companies get a lot of press attention. They're great at PR. And I had an impression that they were a much bigger company. I mean, that's like a tiny company in terms of turnover in
Yeah,
this
for sure.
space.
For sure.
But interesting. Okay.
Definitely interesting. And I think Carl Pei was early 20s when he started that company. So, I mean, he's a fascinating entrepreneur.
Of
And
course.
it should also be mentioned when he started now, and nothing, he has a strong set of investors, among them the Swedish VC firm EQT Ventures and Tony Fadell, which is thought of as kind of the father of the iPod and has worked quite closely with Apple in developing the iPhone. So that's also interesting to start with.
And to my understanding, Teenage Engineering also has equity in the company.
Exactly.
So it seems to be a long-term partnership. Yeah.
Definitely. And this was, caught our attention. Of course, Jesper talked about this in his interview with us that we published earlier this year. So they seem to have a very sort of creative. If you work with Jesper, and what we know about Jesper is he's a very free-spirited, creative mind. He likes to have pretty big walls between the commercial arm and the creative arm of his company. He has created the Teenage Engineering, the synthesizer brand, which has been used by Kanye and Virgil Abloh and all the big ones. He's all about creating cool products. So for a tech brand that wants to sell Android phones, it's a quite interesting choice of designer. But it's my understanding that Jesper is a shareholder. Teenage Engineering was part of developing some of the first products, but nothing actually has their own design department in London working on the new products. So it's a bit unclear to me to the extent of which Jesper is involved, on a day-to-day basis. I think his heart and sort of schedule is heavily rooted in Teenage Engineering.
Can you, maybe for the sake of the listeners that might not know Jesper, you gave a bit of a background, but can you expand a bit on Jesper?
Good idea. So Jesper was one of the original founders of Acne. And Acne, back in the late 90s, it was both a advertising agency and eventually turned into the fashion brand that we now know as Acne Studios, started as Acne Jeans. So I think definitely in the Nordic or the Swedish sort of creative community, Jesper is somewhat of a legend. He kind of went his own way, started his own advertising agency after parting ways with Acne, done some of the most iconic ad campaigns in Sweden. For some reason, even though he says, I view him as a highly creative person, he seems to have really strong commercial sensibilities. He made a lot of money. I think he collects, is it Lamborghinis or something? And when we portrayed him, we was able to photograph him in his family home. He has a townhouse in the old town of Sweden. There's not a lot of people have that type of home in central Stockholm. So that says something about who he is. Very interesting character.
I think he might be the closest we get to Virgil in Sweden.
And of course, Virgil and Kanye has been to Sweden many times to hang out with him, try out his products. All of a sudden on his Instagram, you could see that he has like Kanye in his living room, like testing a new prototype of a synthesizer or something.
He was accused of stealing the tech properties of Teenage Engineering when he built Stem Player.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. And we promised ourselves not to talk about Kanye in this episode. You can't avoid it. But for whoever hasn't read that interview, is one of the best interviews in the issue 3. Wonderful interview, very open-hearted. He talks about his creative process. He seems like a kind of a reclusive guy in that sense. He really wants to be in his studio, just developing new stuff. But definitely interesting and holding the Nothing product, the phone, and seeing the transparent backside and how it sounds and how it sort of flickers in the lights, it's got a really odd sensibility to it that really resonates towards the products that Teenage Engineering puts out as well. There's nothing sort of ordinary about the Teenage Engineering products. They all look kind of techy in a futuristic, weird way. They don't follow any of the traditional design guidelines. So before we get into talk about the product and the details of it, let's get into this issue of Apple versus Android. And we can be transparent that in talking about this prior to the episode, you, Roland, was like, can we even have this question as a headline? It's a non-issue. No Apple users will ever convert to Android because of what you just mentioned. But let's discuss that a little bit, because I think it's fascinating. And just to give a few numbers, globally, Android is much bigger than Apple. So I think the ratio is about 70-30, so 30% to Apple and 70% to Android. In the Nordics, it's different, and definitely in the industries that we are talking about. I think this is why I think it's interesting to talk about this and sort of dive into it, because in the creative industries, in the tech industries, in the fashion industries, I never meet anyone, almost never meet anyone who has an Android phone. And we can look just, taking some metric here, for our newsletter following. We have about 5,000 followers of our newsletter. When we go in to see the statistics of the sort of email opens, that ratio is completely flipped to the global one. So Apple is over high 70s, 75, 77, something like that. And the rest is Android. But let's go. So let's just ask the question straight out, and we can answer it in this episode. Do you think, a company like Nothing or any other Android company can convert Apple users to the other side?
No.
Straight up, no.
That's the simple. Maybe a few exceptions, like unless you are, let's say, a new, younger user, like a young consumer, kind of stepping into the ecosystems, right? So I'm too old. I've done, I've been in the Apple ecosystem for too long. I've spent too much money, to be honest. That's the problem. I literally have 300 films in iTunes I paid for. And I could go on of how much money I've spent. It doesn't make any sense for me. It's too complicated. I'm lazy, right? But if you're maybe 16 and you're stepping into this, then that could be an opportunity. However, I don't think that's the target audience that Nothing is aiming at.
Yeah,
well, don't say that. I think they've done a few activities, and namely, we can talk about what they did at London Fashion Week. But I do think they're kind of aiming in the lower generations here. But I think there's an opportunity there. But
yeah, I think price, and that's maybe I should take back my comment about target audience. Just looking at the price point is around 500 euros, 5,000 SEK.
Yeah.
It's a cheap phone.
If
you look at what you get, the tech specs and the design, and this is also why I have this kind of craving for it, because it's like, it's only 5,000. Maybe I should buy it just for experimenting. But
I want to add to that. Speaking about how you're really into the system, and if you want to buy this phone, you have to be kind of a clear page. You can't really own any Apple stuff before. I kind of want to be. I'm on your side to start with. I think I'm a bit too deep in to the Apple ecosystem, but still, if I want to be some kind of devil advocate here, I use a lot of non-Apple ecosystem stuff on my Apple's devices. Right. I have Google Chrome downloaded to my iPhone instead of the Safari one. I have Chrome on my laptop, on my MacBook. Yeah. I have the Gmail app downloaded from the Apple Store to my phone. I use Gmail on my laptop. I use all the Google stuff, like Google Documents and Spreadsheet and everything. When I make a presentation, I use the Google Slides. I have Google Drive. I have Google Photos. So in many ways, I use on a daily basis. I use a lot of like non-Apple specific apps and services every day that I have to download as a third-party app to the Apple devices. So in
Have
many
the same
ways, if
pattern.
they run
Yeah, agree.
if they run even smoother on the Nothing, for example, that could be something that could make me want to look that way. But
I think you're onto something, and it's interesting to see how Google has sort of creeped into my digital life the past few years. I've tried several Android phones over the years. I've tried many of the Samsung ones, and several of those products are like just awesome products. You get really excited when you hold them, and when Samsung came out with the flip phones, where you flip it up and you have this almost tablet-like space. I really enjoyed trying that, but in trying it, which you can do as a journalist, they let you borrow the phone and so forth. I installed all the apps. I installed my own Google ecosystem. I installed, everything I could install, and there's quite a lot of, my Konrad Olsson sort of digital world that pops up on an Android phone if I just, type in my information. But what it doesn't do, and what kept me from, unplugging my SIM card from my Apple phone and plugging it into Android, and I think this, what you're talking about, Roland, is about what you've invested in money, but it's also about what you invested in. I think I have a couple of 3,000-4,000 notes in my notes app in Apple, and that's connected to my iCloud account. I have all the passwords to every place on the internet that I log into is connected to my iCloud password system. So there's I have Find My iPhone. I can look where my daughter is. Find My Friends functionality of my iPhone. That's connected to my iPhone. So there's a lot of seemingly kind of small things that you've installed during the years that's connected to the iPhone ecosystem, which is really smart of them, I guess. And this is really a thought out strategy, I think, and that's why they build these ecosystems, that you want to lock people up
and you
for
can't
life. Really,
forget the biggest one, the $1 million one, and that's the iMessage. It's the green bubble dilemma.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what people say when they're on Tinder. They match with someone. They're like, "Oh, send me your number," and it's a green text. They block them. Like, you don't want to be that Android guy. Everyone knows this. So I think Apple they can very easily implement their iMessage stuff to Android. And I think that's like the real big thing. I think that's when people will be like, "Oh, I have to pay for text messages? Is this like 2009? What's this? It's a green text bubble. What's going on here?" And Apple can, if they want to. They're gatekeeping. They want to have.
Then there's another element, which I think has been the key element, especially in our community that we cover also at Scandinavia Mind, the creative community. It's a question of identity.
Yeah. That's
it.
Of course.
It's stupid.
It's status. Yeah.
Yeah, it's stupid if you look at it objectively, but that's it, right? It's about design aesthetics, identity, the job's legacy, history of the brand, where you kind of you accept that you're locked into the ecosystem. It's shitty, and that you're locked in for life, and that you're spending way too much money. But it's kind of, you accept it because the products just are amazing. You almost never have any technical issues with hardware or software. Just look at colleagues at work. It's a divider. Like, we have the Apple users at work, and then you have the PC users at work. In my company as well, right? And we always make jokes about each other. And it's kind of, "Oh, you're rebooting your PC again? Haha, how many times have you done that today?" It's so much a question of identity, and that is the point of Nothing. When I did my research for this episode, I kind of looked at identity. It's one of the key things they're trying to build here.
It's a differentiator for sure. That's how they want to differentiate themselves, and they're using kind of some key things out of Apple's playbook there, because identity is one part, status is another. Yes. To be, you want to be top of the food chain, lifestyle industries, fashion, design, so forth, tech, startup people, they want to be seen as early adopters, as kind of top of the food chain. And there's a lot of talk now. There's a buzz around Apple going into search, for instance, and doing an ads business to compete with Google. And what many people say is that we will be successful not because they have the most searches or the most eyeballs on it, but that the eyeballs that they do have is kind of a premium crowd. It's the equivalent of advertising in, top airline magazines or something. You have like a business crowd that has a lot of money, affluent crowd. If you want to sell watches or expensive perfumes, you want to go that route as opposed to someone buying a cheaper Android phone. So status is a big part of this, I think.
Yeah, and talking about price point, so also if you do some research on it, if you look at the flagship phones the flagship Android phones, they have the same price level as Apple's flagship phones, actually. But they are expensive. I mean, you need to pay like more than €1,000, 10,000 SEK for a basic flagship phone today.
Yeah.
And if you want to have good performance in terms of storage, etc., I mean, you're up to 15,000 SEK or more, right? Even, I mean, up to 20,000. That's like a laptop price, right? So I think that in itself is also a testimony to the huge profits that Apple are doing on this, which I think is interesting also with nothing. So they have designed a phone with flagship tech, flagship design, at a price point that is half or even more than half of the price of any other Android or Apple flagship phones.
Yeah.
So I think that is interesting in itself. But for nothing then to reach real profitability, they need to scale a lot. They need to sell more phones, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm a bit doubting that they will succeed, to be honest.
Yeah, so let's talk about their how they're reaching out to perhaps younger audiences. And they did do an activity during London Fashion Week, and it's not often you see a tech brand doing this big of a push into fashion. Erik, you've been covering this.
Yeah, I wrote about this when London Fashion Week happened. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Talking about, like you said, Roland, how much they've sold. I read that I think 2 weeks ago they first released their selling rate, and I think in India nothing has sold over 100,000 units, but they did not want to enclose how much they sold in Europe or the rest of the world, which probably says a lot. I don't know how many people in Scandinavia has bought it, for example, but during London Fashion Week, at least, I think Chet Lowe, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, is right now in the UK, like one of the hottest and most hyped, most acclaimed fashion brands in the UK. And they had, during London Fashion Week, they had a runway with, I don't know if you guys know, but they have Chet Lowe, his designs is like, it's very distinct. It's just like spiky knitted dresses and spiky knitted shirts and stuff. So it's kind of see-through and it's like spiky. So as the models walked out, they were like having like these the nothing phones, with the glyph back face shining through the clothes, and they also had a kind of like a lipstick formed thing like in the straps of the bags they were wearing. And people were like, "What's this?" And that was a teaser for Nothing's new earbuds that's coming. And how do you tease something in the tech world? We've seen a lot of different ways you can tease stuff. Like some people just do like a 3-second YouTube clip. Some people reach out to influencers, but this is basically reaching out to a very niche, a very design and fashion conscious audience, like who actually watches the Chet Lowe runway during London Fashion Week. Of course, it was covered by Vogue, like not Vogue Business or something. It was just Vogue. They're like runway. When they make runway reports, they bring it up. They also had this nothing stuff. So they will definitely cut through the noise a bit, which I think is interesting. And I think
it's super interesting, but I think we should acknowledge it's very niche. Okay, so 100,000 units in India. Just to give you a context, let's guess. How many Apple phones are shipped every year? Like 2021, how many Apple phones were shipped globally?
Well, this phone has been out like 4 months.
No, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, of course.
235 million. How many Android? How many Android units were shipped last year? 1 billion.
Wow.
Okay. So, they don't exist in statistics, nothing, which is fine because they just launched, right?
Yeah.
And I honestly doubt that they will make a mark. I hope they will because, I like entrepreneurs. I like beautiful products. I think it's a great, idea. But I think it's a niche product. and that's fine. I think they can reach profitability by being niche. I think the entrepreneur will make lots of money, and the investors, and that's all good, right? But just to put it into a context of the global market, like 1 billion is quite a lot more than 100,000 or even 1 million or 10 million, right? We're talking
compare.
like non-existing points on this in statistics, right?
And of course, like I think if you compare, I don't know, Bang Olufsen speakers or Bose speakers compared to teenage engineering speakers, you could probably look at teenage engineering being very niched and being very like the design conscious kind of tech head. Maybe that's what Nothing is going for here. They're going for not really for to battle Samsung or Apple, but I think they want to take those people from Apple and Samsung that kind of want something.
I think
new.
we are
very small percent.
we are into something interesting here, and it should be noted also. I mentioned the investors of Nothing. EQT Ventures, Tony Fadell from Apple, former Apple designer, but you also have Alphabet's venture capital arm, which is Google. So maybe and Google just yesterday launched their new Pixel phones in the Nordics. You were there, Erik, and we can talk about that later. So maybe we are looking at a more sort of, differentiated landscape for phones. I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning, I've been reflecting upon them. I'm an Apple user. I haven't been excited about a phone since forever. So, with billions and billions of phones shipped every year, could it be that, just like fashion, we have the big players, the fast fashion arm, but you also have niche fashion brands that you want to, get attached to? Maybe there's an opportunity both for Android and for Apple to have other creatives coming, other brands, other types of collaborations to capture another type of audience. I think that's a really interesting prospect for the world of cell phones.
No, definitely, and I welcome it. So whenever I bring up statistics, it's not to criticize, just to reflect on realities and facts. And maybe I'll try to make a prediction here. Let's see if I'm right.
You'll remember this.
My prediction could be that maybe Google will invest in teenage engineering as well and embed it into their design studio.
Aha.
Okay, all right.
Well, let's keep an eye on that. But we should go in and talk about the product, and maybe we play the little sound that happens when you open it. Erik, you're holding it right now. You've been trying it out for a couple of weeks. I'd love to hear your take on how it is to use the Nothing phone.
So I've been the two phone kind of guy now for a couple of last weeks. I have I have to be honest, I've been using my
two phone guy.
I got two phones like Kevin Gates. Anyways, I've been using the iPhone, my iPhone now, because that's my daily one. That's what I use to. In Scandinavia or in Sweden, we have something called BankID and Swish. Like you're connected to your bank and you can do digital transactions and stuff. And it's quite a hassle to move between phones and stuff. So I've been using that one, my iPhone, for paying the bills and stuff. But I've been using the Nothing one for listening to music, watching YouTube that I do a lot in bed, watching TikTok or whatever, taking photos when I've been out and about. And all I can say is, like you said earlier, Roland, it's more than half, or at least half the price of the iPhone I used the other day. So it's significantly cheaper. And I think, even though it has some really cool features, like the glyph interface, the kind of R2D2 thing on the back.
What is that? Describe that. Because that's the thing that makes you go super excited when you just hold it.
Yeah. That's what cuts the noise. And that's you can basically, depending on who calls you or who texts you, there's a LED light on the back of the phone that will light up, and it makes really cool. You can kind of like teenage engineering sounds. I play it here for the listeners to hear.
This is so tech nerdy. I love it.
Yeah, it is. But it's basically it's like your own little R2D2 in your pocket that speaks to you. It kind of wants you to reach down, or your BB-8 or whatever Star Wars droid you want to use. But the one thing that I can say is, if I'm being honest, the camera compared to the iPhone, not good enough. Doesn't hold up, because Nothing is saying, they're like, oh, we have the macro lens. You can get really close. Thing about smartphone cameras and the macro lens, whoever actually uses those? They're great in the presentation when they're doing macro shots of flowers and backlit raindrops on leaves. I never take those pictures. I take pictures of like a waiter holding a wine bottle to me.
Sorry, I'm gonna stop you, Erik.
All right, go on.
This is where I'm using I use macro. I think it's fantastic because I'm a photography nerd, and I think the macro lens or the apps offering macro, kind of faked macro, is great. And actually, isn't the Nothing phone aimed towards the creative industry, creative people? So wouldn't that be like a feature that you like as a creator?
I don't know, but what kind of pictures do you take with them? Like, when do you actually want to take a close up of? Like, what could it be? It's like
I take a lot of close-ups all the time. I go into nature taking close-ups of raindrops on leaves, actually. So
yeah, I don't know. Not for me, but okay then. I stand corrected. But I always thought, like, why are they showing all these pictures on these presentations? I want to see pictures of, like, if I have a rash on my arm and I want to show my friends, look at the rash I have. That's kind of pictures I want to see at the presentation. I want it to be like real pictures that I see.
I'm siding with Erik on this. I also don't know when the hell do you need the macro to use it? You want to be able to.
I stand corrected, and like you said, Roland, it's if they want to reach out to creative people. Maybe I'm not.
There's there's a lot of creators using the macro features for product photography today. So I'm just saying,
right.
No names mentioned in the podcast, but
okay.
But yeah, okay. Anyways, the camera is quite okay. I might, if we're sharing like a video on Instagram, I have some pictures of. But I went to the gym we have at our office.
Macro haters. That's so interesting.
It's obsolete. Also, speaking of the camera, like first I thought that the glyph interface, the LED light on the back, that's kind of a gimmick. That's what I thought. Like, okay, this is a way to reach through. But there have been some times when I think it actually works, like the flash or the torch, depending if you're British or American, when you're taking pictures, the light can be quite intense. Taking a picture of your friend at a restaurant or whatever. So you can use this interface to, if you put it on max, you can use that as like a ring light, that influencers use. They put on their phone. So at the right lighting or at the right distance, I've actually quite liked this LED glyph thing. It looks a bit more, it's a softer light, it's way better than the flashes. But, it doesn't really work when it's light. It has to be quite dark and it has to be, maximum 2 meters away.
So but that speaks to a younger audience. That speaks to more like a Gen Z influencer TikTok crowd, sounds like.
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't know what macro photography is. Okay.
No one in that generation shoots nature photos with macro.
And also, like we said, I think just holding it every day and like picking it out of my pocket, it looks and feels really nice. Like it feels like a teenage engineering product. I've had some teenage engineering speakers. My dad is kind of a tech nerd. He had ones when I grew up. And I think when you touch them and you feel the knobs and you touch all the things, you can it feels high tech and it looks great.
What about the software, or the design of the OS?
I think this comes to me being so used to Apple. I've been a bit, frustrated at times. Like, how do I actually lower the screen brightness? Took me like 5 minutes to get that because I'm not used to it. So, but if in terms of how it looks and how it feels, it's their own operating system. It's called Nothing OS. So they have their own font integrated into the phone, which looks great. And also, I'm a big fan of the red, black, and white color scheme. I'm a big white stripes fan, so I like those three colors together. So that's very nice, but that's very personal for me.
But I've also understood that they actually, in this sort of Nothing OS, which is a version of Android, it's much more slimmed down. One of the problems with the Android phone when you open it, and even Apple as well, like you get so many apps that you don't ask for. Like you open it up, and like, oh, we've started 5 new apps for you. I'm like, I didn't ask for this. I don't want this clutter in my phone. Yeah. And I think one thing they pride themselves on with Nothing is that they really does have a more minimalistic approach to what's inside the phone when you open it. Did you feel that?
Exactly. That's exactly what I felt. It was kind of cleaned up. And interesting that you said that for somehow Alphabet were some of the investors. The only thing that's on here when I downloaded it was a Google map, a Google folder. So that's all that was on there. It's all Google folders. These are the ones that I use every day. I told you about that before. Yeah. Gmail, YouTube, Google Drive, all that stuff, files. So interestingly enough, all the apps that were on there when I first opened it were Google apps. So right up my alley, since I use it.
It's super interesting. That's what's kind of weird when you try a Samsung phone, is that you're kind of both in the Google Android ecosystem and Samsung's ecosystem. They have their own ecosystem of passwords and apps and stuff like that. So you're kind of in a dual twilight zone between these two mega corporations. So you're saying now nothing doubles down on the Google ecosystem. They don't have their own.
From the get-go, from when I first unlocked the phone. That's what it kind of told me. Hey, here's a Google apps, use them. And I have all my passwords on via Chrome, so I was in every app in like 2 seconds. All the passwords were automatically in there and stuff.
So this is not a tech gear podcast, but it will be interesting next week when you can compare the Google's Pixel phone.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing a kind of a reel review, so Instagram reel, where I'm trying it out and trying to picture it and everything.
Lastly,
they have the best, and they have the best camera though.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, we're going to have to wrap this up now, and I'm going to end by asking the question again. Is it as clear-cut? Can nothing bring Apple users to Android? What do you guys think? Is it a hard no, or is it more nuanced now? What do you say, Roland?
No.
Okay.
I would say yes. Let's say yes, just for the dynamic of the podcast. I think for the people that might not have been tapped into the Apple ecosystem too much, they're maybe like 20 years old. They haven't invested a lot of time and money. They have 5,000 kroner or $500 over to spare. They might buy this phone because they're not that connected to the Apple ecosystem. I think it will work.
Super interesting. Nothing founded by a Swedish super entrepreneur Carl Pei and designed by Jesper Kouthoofd, Teenage Engineering. Don't forget to read our interview with Jesper Kouthoofd from issue 3. It's out online now. All right, guys, this has been episode 2 of season 4 of Scandinavian Mind podcast. I actually got some feedback from our last episode where we talked about TikTok, and it has to be said also, it was went viral. The reel that we posted was one of our most watched reels in recent history. So it feels like a topic that engages a lot of people. I got a text from Emma Ridderstad, which is the founder of Warp in Media. We've had her on the podcast before, kind of a company that's on the frontier of new virtual worlds and that sort of thing. And she mentioned this whole thing about the TikTok algorithm and what it does to sort of the youth. We kind of touched on that in our episode. We didn't go into the ramifications of the Chinese ownership of TikTok. And there's a lot of debate right now going around should we even should allow TikTok in sort of Western democracies because of the potential ramifications of having the Chinese government having insight into this company. I don't know, guys, this feels like a whole separate episode, but do you have any comments on this?
Colonial bullshit.
Cool. What do you mean by that?
I get so tired. I mean, look at Meta, what they've done for the past 15 years.
Right.
It's the same shit. It's just from another country. And we happen to be in the kind of... we happen to be on the American side, not the Chinese side, in how the world is constructed. That's it. Simple as that. And of course, I'm against, the political system in China. And there's huge challenges with human rights, privacy, etc. Right? Of course, I'm aware. But at the end of the day, can you really prove that the TikTok algorithm is more harmful to people than Meta's algorithms? Emma, I love you, but no.
All right, we can discuss this at a later episode, but there is a huge debate going on. I think the CEO of the media company Axel Springer in Germany was quoted recently at the Code conference saying TikTok should be banned in every Western democracy. So it really stirs strong emotions.
Yes.
All right, guys, we've talked about the new Pixel coming out. We might touch on that in future episodes. What are you guys excited about on the week to come? Roland,
well,
any
I like art. I like art. No surprise. So I'm gonna plug work-related stuff. So in Stockholm, Sweden, we have Sprit Museum. It's a museum dedicated to the kind of the history of alcohol, and it was founded by the Absolut company. when they were sold to Pernod Ricard, they donated the whole art collection. 850 original art pieces were donated to Split Museum. And actually, the history of Absolute Vodka started with Andy Warhol designing, the first piece of art for Absolute exclusively, and then it just continued throughout the 80s, 90s, and beyond. And there's an exhibition now starting this weekend with 90 selected art pieces from the collection with original Warhol, original herrings, etc. Displayed. And it's actually, even if you don't care about vodka, it's great art, to be honest.
All right, good stuff. I also want to plug you, Erik. You had a wonderful story on ScandinaviaMind.com this week about why the design industry is not catering to the world's 3 billion gamers. We actually went into talking about gaming chairs and what they mean for culture and why the design companies of the Nordics are not catering to that crowd. I thought that was a wonderful story. We've been talking about it forever about doing this, and finally did it. Just a brief comment about that. What was your insight in doing that story?
First, we were making jokes to have like top 5 gaming chairs to like properly scare away all our readers from the platform. But this was quite interesting. I got to speak to me and Johan, my colleague. We got to speak to Made by Choice founder Niklas Ahlström. Is that his name? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And Levi De Marco, the head of brand and communication at Hem. And they were kind of, they're part of 2 very niche and like exclusive design brands. It's not IKEA stuff. But they were talking about, we have to change. We're so far behind fashion. We're so far behind entertainment. We're so far behind music. And we need to make gaming stuff. So read about it. It's interesting.
All right, wonderful. This has been the Scandinavian Mind podcast. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter, not to miss out on any upcoming talks or events or content that comes out of the Scandinavian Mind content machine. Guys, this has been great. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend and see you next week.
See ya.
Take care.